Kia ora, welcome to Womenpower. This week we're talking about how women can strategise effectively to make our voices heard by politicians, the media and the broader public. We'll speak to Equal Employment Opportunities Commissioner Dr Jackie Blue for tips on how to lobby successfully. We'll also have our Womenpower Fail and Win, News of the Week and the 5 action points from this episode. But first, we look at the position of Pasifika women in our workforce. They're the lowest paid workers in New Zealand, with many earning only the minimum wage of $14.25 an hour. Because people can't support their families on such a low income, many of these women work more than one job to make ends meet. This cuts down on family time and stretches women incredibly thinly. Compounding the problems, low-income families find it extremely hard to access loans and become magnets for loan sharks. To talk more about this, I'm joined by lawyer Amelia Schaff. Kia ora, Amelia, welcome to the program.
Malolele.
Pasifika women are the lowest paid workers in New Zealand. Many of them are only earning the minimum wage of $14.25 an hour. What's the impact on them and their families from such low incomes?
It means that their families are struggling to meet with everyday needs, such as food. I've been to places where the children are eating basically junk food because they can't afford to buy healthy food for the children.
Because fruit and vegetables can sometimes be very expensive.
Yes, and I mean, if they have to buy one item of food, it will be bread or rice, potatoes. So basically, there's not much choice in buying anything else other than the very basic.
It seems strange in New Zealand that we have got to the position that people working full-time can't actually support their families anymore.
Yes, I think that the wages are very low, and also the price of, the cost of living is very high, not just the food cost, but also power and rental accommodation is also very high compared to the wages that they earn.
What needs to be done to improve the earnings of Pasifika women?
Yeah, Pacific women need to have the opportunities given to them to have higher learning, because the statistics are that they are predominantly in low-cost jobs, clerical, cleaning, and also in factories. So basically their ability to earn more is quite limited if they are stuck in those jobs. So they need to be given the opportunity to have further training, tertiary training, not just at university but also at the technical institutes, so they have more skills to be able to get higher earning jobs.
How hard is it for women to access higher education when we've got this user pays education system? That's quite a barrier, isn't it?
Yes, it is a barrier. They will have to have student loans, and that will end up crippling them later on. I mean, it's easy credit in the beginning, but they have to pay that later, and also the student costs are high. When you finish your education, then you have a loan that will potentially cripple you later on, especially if you don't get a higher paying job at the end of it.
That's right, because if you're in a low paying job, then it just takes you so much longer to pay off the loan.
Yes, exactly, and at the end of the process you might have $50,000 to pay off. So yeah, it depends on what you get in the end, whether it's high enough to be able to, for you to be able to pay the student loan.
And people on low incomes are not attractive customers to banks, and it's very hard to get a loan from a bank if you're on a low income and you don't earn your own home, and that pushes people basically into the hands of second and third tier lenders and loan sharks, doesn't it?
Yes, and when you are on low income, you struggle to pay your bills, for example the phone and power bills, and then your credit rating goes down, and so basically you are in a spiral of debt and problems. So you end up with third-tier lenders or loan sharks, and you get into more difficulty.
And also people on low incomes typically don't have any money set aside or anything to fall back on, so if there's an emergency or the car breaks down or something happens, then quite often they need to borrow money really urgently, don't they?
Yes, there's absolutely no savings at the end of the day, because what you earn is very little. And so therefore, when they look for a new car, if their car breaks down, and our car is quite essential to travelling to your jobs, especially if you have to travel outside the normal public transport routes, then you are looking at quite a high cost. You borrow $8,000 or more to buy a decent car. And when you do that and you get into difficulty if you can't pay the car loan, then you just get into, as I said, a spiral of debt. And you get driven to go to another lender to try and pay off what you owe to the previous lender. So, yeah, there's a never-ending problem.
And often people don't actually understand the total amount that they're going to repay. They sort of look at how much they have to repay each week, and when they sign up to the loan they think, oh, maybe we can afford it, and they don't realise just how much interest and how huge the total bill is going to be, because even though they've tried to make loan documents simpler, they're still quite complicated, aren't they?
Yes, in my experience, in my work, people come to me and say, I was getting a loan for $8,000 and I didn't know that they added on $2,000 and then on top of that the interest rates. And when people are desperate, all they want is to get the money, or if they want a car, all they want is to get the car. The attention is not focused on the details of what they will end up paying at the end.
What could be done to make affordable credit more accessible? I mean, I think one thing would be microfinance schemes that lend money to families at very low interest rate and with no fees, and that's been done in lots of other countries, for example Australia and the UK, but we don't have a lot of that here.
Yeah, I think microfinance, depending on how much people can get a loan for, because as you have stated, the main problem is car loans. So that's the amount of money that's likely to cripple them. For other things, everyday things like obligations, microfinance may be helpful for those people, but that leaves the car loans still a problem for low-income people.
And the other issue with cars is that often they get ripped off when they're buying the actual car. You know, they get charged far too much for a car, which is not really a good car.
Yes, I've come across that problem a lot. The cars are not mechanically sound, and people don't get them checked by the AA or reputable mechanics, so what they're buying is a good car. What sometimes happens is that after a few weeks, the car breaks down totally, and people have problems trying to address getting another vehicle.
And even though the car's broken down, because the loan contract's separate, they've still got to repay all the money that they've borrowed?
Yes, especially if they're getting a loan from a bank or someone else, and they haven't got it from or arranged by the car dealer, then they still have to pay the loan. And also sometimes if the car is a total write-off, it's not mechanically sound, they don't seek advice to be able to return and cancel the contract at an early stage, so they end up with still having to pay the loan and waiting to resolve the situation and get another car that's satisfactory.
Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you very much.
Now it's time for the Womenpower fail and Womenpower win. Women in the public sector are paid an average 14% less than men, despite making up 60% of the sector's workforce. Preliminary analysis by Equal Employment Opportunities Commissioner Dr. Jackie Blue shows little has changed since the last survey 2 years ago. The World Bank is championing women's businesses in Romania through its Banking on Women program, which provides loans to help Romanian women run their own businesses. Although the legal status of women in Romania has improved in the past 50 years, serious challenges remain, and many laws still make it difficult for women to fully participate in economic life. Now, to talk more about lobbying successfully for change and equal employment opportunities, it's time to welcome Equal Employment Opportunities Commissioner, Dr. Jackie Blue. Kia ora, Jackie, welcome to the program.
Lovely to be here, Catriona.
What did you discuss at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women?
The main theme this year was about the Millennium Development Goals, which really focus on developing countries, and they were 8 goals set back in 2000, and they expire next year in 2015. So really the discussion was, what's going to be the goals post-2015, what's not there at the moment, and what came through quite clearly. I'm pleased to say that violence against women, a standalone goal, great. Paid gender gaps, standalone. Sexual reproductive health and rights, access to assets for women, and there were others as well, but those are the main ones.
Do you think overall that there's actually progress internationally on improving the status of women?
No, absolutely not. I had the privilege of listening to the UN expert on violence, or the Special Rapporteur on violence, and she spoke about the 20 years that they've had the Special Rapporteur. And she said violence was an epidemic. If it was a disease, a state of emergency would have been declared. We are not winning the battle on violence against women, no way. Pay gender gaps, every country in the world has a pay gender gap. Ours might be quite small when you look at the hourly rates. When you expand that out to weekly and annual, it's even bigger. So no country's achieved pay gender gaps equality. And the other thing is women in political representation or in decision-making roles, we're not winning that either. We only have, 33% women. We should be 50%. Many countries have low numbers of women MPs or no MPs at all.
Mm. You describe violence against women as our national shame.
Yeah.
What specific steps do you think we need to take as a country to deal with that?
Yeah. Well, that was Dame Sylvia Cartwright called it our dark secret. And I think the Aussies have got it actually similar, dirty grubby secret I think they call it, but basically it has been secretive. Dame Sylvia did blow the lid on it, good on her, back when she was retiring and she gave her speech in Parliament. But violence against women is fuelled by gender equality. No ifs, no buts, gender equality. There's a balance, a power imbalance, and that is a basic issue. Women are just valued less than men. I was really concerned about the Roastbusters case last year, when there was a whole section of society, young people, women and men, who thought that the behaviour of those boys was quite acceptable, and that shocked me to the core. And I think I really want to look at preventative measures, and I think there should be education in schools, what healthy and respectful relationships are all about, what consent is, and so forth. Women also need to have economic independence. Once they're independent, they can make better choices and have better control of their lives, and that will come through education and fair pay. Women also need to have control of their own bodies. They need to have access to sexual reproductive health services. That includes free and easy access to contraception. But those are just some for the moment. But I think we can change social norms. We've proved it with drinking and driving. We need our men as champions. We have to work with boys and men, but we can change social norms. I'm sure there's there's no single strategy, no magic bullet when you use multiple interventions, but I think prevention is the way the world seems to be going, and we can stop it before it starts.
And I think, as you mentioned, it's really important, the attitudes of young people, and especially boys, and teaching them respect for women and girls.
That's exactly right, exactly. Yeah, I was so shocked when those Roastbusters came and there was some youth that thought it was absolutely okay. So education, and also the other thing we need is comprehensive age-appropriate sexuality education in all schools, and I think that would be a good starting point. I'm sure there's many other strategies too, but that would be a good starting point.
You mentioned earlier that in New Zealand we seem to be stuck at 33% of women in Parliament, and that's been the same for the last 5 elections, which is quite a while now. What can be done about that? I mean, when there was the suggestion last year that Labor might actually take positive steps to address that, that was immediately labelled the man ban unfair to men off the agenda. So how can we get past that?
Well, I think it's a bit of a catch-22. We won't change the culture till we get more women MPs on board. Some parties are doing better than others, and I was concerned when the man ban, which was women-only electorates in some situations, was proposed by Labor, and the media seemed to grab hold of it and call it the man ban. It became a joke. Labor dropped it and reverted to targets, which I think are eminently achievable. They are already at a bit over 40%. They will easily get 45% this current election, and the target of 50% in 2017 I see as absolutely achievable. National has only got 25% women in caucus. They've got a lot of work to do. I think the environment of Parliament has been around for centuries. We had we're based on the United Kingdom parliamentary system, the Westminster system, and it's been going for centuries. It's a winner versus loser. To win, you have to crush your opponent and denigrate them. So you get these very personal attacks in Parliament. I'm sure I've heard that it's much better than it used to be, and I'd hate to have been around the time when Marilyn Waring was the only woman MP in National Caucus. But you know, it's the hostile environment, and to change that, we're just going to need more women to step up. But at the moment, women perceive it as something that they had to try and protect their family from. Why would you bother when you see women like Julia Gillard and Helen Clark having sustained personal attacks on them? So, you know, it's just not conducive. Women are far too smart. Why would I want to step up and expose myself and my family to this type of treatment?
There are things that can be done. I mean, there's actually more than 100 countries in the world that have taken positive steps to deal with this. I think one small thing they did was with the parliamentary sitting hours to finish at 6 o'clock on Thursdays, but there must be more steps they can take like that, because women wanting to combine working and a family, parliamentary hours and having to be in Wellington, that's really tough on families, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no question about it. And I think that's something that Parliament can look at, and I see no reason why we can't make it more flexible for women who want to have families and still be an MP and serve their constituency.
And obviously this year is election year. What steps can women take to lobby politicians and try and make progress on issues of concern to women? Because so often in election campaigns, you know, the important issues are jobs and the economy and the Reserve Bank. But for some reason, violence against women, the gender pay gap, it's just not, you know, that's a woman's subsidiary issue.
As an afterthought, that's right, women are 50% of the voters, we better have something for the little women, so we'll throw in maybe paid parental leave and that'll keep them happy. And I think Germaine Greer, when she was last in New Zealand, said that our progress had stalled because women were far too polite. I think it's time we got into the politicians' faces, quite frankly, Catriona, and not accept any of this nonsense. Now, you've written a women's election agenda, and I think that's excellent. And I think if Women New Zealand got really organised and got behind your agenda, we could organise political forums in every electorate, and for every candidate can step up and answer those questions. Well, you know, you can't answer every question, but we'll make sure we could hone it down to some real critical issues and put them on notice that, you know, we are 50% of the population, we're very powerful as a group, and we will not be ignored.
Yeah, because as you say, women's issues just seem to be afterthoughts, and I think the problem is also that the media and commentators don't really see those as being issues to be talked about in election campaigns. And for example, when political debates are framed, you would never ask a question about domestic violence in those debates.
And there's always going to be some sort of weasel words that will come out, you know, about what we're doing, and there's so many millions of dollars, and we've, you know, women's refuge this and whatever, and you can see through it. It's just people talking without anything coming out and nothing really meaningful. Look, at the end of the day, we need real traction on violence against women. It is a single human rights abuse that's pervasive and epidemic in this world, including New Zealand. I was a victim of domestic violence myself, and that was over 30 years ago, and I was a doctor at the time, and I just felt so ashamed. There was no 0800 number, there was no sort of education, and looking back I can see how it happened. It was pervasive. I got into this very dominating and subordinate role, and I let it happen. I got out of it fortunately after 2 years, but I know what women go through, and it's not nice, and we've got to stop this gender equality. Women are just valued less. Whether you know, it's just violence, it's violence, it's violence. Whether you say it's under the realms of cultural violence because there's a belief that women are subordinate, it's still violence, and it's gender equality. We just have to change that way of thinking.
So we need stroppy women this year. Sounds
Absolutely.
great. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, you're welcome, Catriona.
Now it's time for News of the Week. The YWCA is introducing awards to acknowledge businesses which have implemented equal pay policies or are taking steps towards closing the gap. Look for more information on the YWCA Auckland's website. Former United States President Jimmy Carter has issued a call to end the abuse and subjugation of women, calling it the worst and most pervasive and unaddressed human rights violation on earth. The World Health Organization estimates that 1 in 3 women around the world is subject to sexual violence in her life. Each year, about 14 million girls are given away as child brides. An additional 4 million women and girls are sold into slavery. According to the United Nations, at least 125 million girls in Africa and the Middle East have been subjected to female genital mutilation. An anti-abortion group is pressuring the National Party not to select experienced Dr. Rosemary Fenwick as its candidate in Wellington Central because she has authorised and performed abortions. Retiring Somerset Group Chief Executive Nora Barlow says that men promote each other and often overlook capable women whom they see as completely different from them. She says when promotions are decided in companies, there's an unconscious bias to appoint a person like you, who is often a male who played rugby, has gone to this college and played cricket. Survivors of violence workshops are being held in the Solomon Islands as part of a groundbreaking theatre project called Stages of Change. The workshops aim to lift the lid on the culture of silence in the Pacific over endemic violence against women. Women in Norway's armed forces have reported a drop in levels of sexual harassment following the introduction of mixed dormitories. The shared dorms are the latest equality initiative in the Norwegian armed forces, with 2 women and 4 men sharing each room. One female soldier said that having men and women living so close together reduced their perceived differences. Japan has been praised by a senior International Olympic Committee official for the number of women on its organising committee's executive board as the country, long a male-dominated society, prepares for the 2020 Olympics. More than 900 people attended the National Summit on Gender and Development in Co-ops held in the Philippines. The 2-day training session included workshops on gender sensitivity, women in development and gender in development. Now it's time for the 5 action points. Support the Living Wage campaign to increase incomes for low-paid families. Promote microfinance schemes to provide affordable loans to people who cannot access bank loans. Lobby politicians in election year to support policies to improve women's lives. Stand as a candidate yourself if you don't think the MPs already in Parliament are doing a good enough job. Buy from companies which lead the way with gender pay initiatives and promote women to top positions. Be stroppy in working for change. Being polite is not working. That's our program for this week. Join me next week when we'll speak to Labour's Women's Affairs spokesperson Carol Beaumont. We'll ask her to explain in detail what commitment Labour has to women this election year. We'll also talk to law lecturer Kylie Quince about how the law discriminates against women and how this can be fixed. Thanks for watching. Ka kite anō.